The family of God, in terms of the church today, it's a big family.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't used to be big in terms of the number of different types of churches you could go to. But, we as Moody Bible Institute are an evangelical, non-denominational organization. We have certain faith distinctives. But you don't have to agree with us on everything to be saved. We don't think that. Most Christians, most common sense Christians don't think that. There's some basic things you need to believe to be saved, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Since Lauren's our theologian, take us through, what are the very basics one must believe to be saved?
You should believe that Jesus was born and is God in three persons, and was born a human, came to bear all your sins, takes up all your sins in himself, dies, therefore taking your sin with him, and is risen and brings new life.
Yeah, and
He's the sacrificial lamb.
if you confess with your lips he's Lord and believe in your heart God raised him from the dead, you will be saved.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to get the days of creation right.
No.
You don't have to get the mode of baptism right.
It's like really low on the list.
Right. So for a person who loves history, I think church history is absolutely fascinating. For whatever reason, modern evangelical culture is kind of apathetic about church history. We don't really care all that much. You're not going to hear many pastors quoting authors from much more than 50 years ago. You know what I mean? We're going to hear maybe lots of Tim Keller, who's awesome, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe some C.S. Lewis.
John Piper.
Yeah, but you're not going to hear, you're not going to hear from Tacitus no, he's a historian, actually.
Augustine.
Augustine. You're not going to hear from any of the other church fathers.
Gregory of Nyssa.
Justin Martyr. You're not going to hear about those.
Right.
I think I'm kind of sad about that. I think part of it is there's this sting for Protestants from the Reformation still to this day. They're scared that somehow looking at church history will make you Roman Catholic. Which, by the way, we have many Roman Catholic friends.
Oh, yeah.
God bless them. We love that you're here. Yeah. Anyway, all that to say, if you don't know this, 1517 was what historians believe was the beginning of the Protestant Reformation, the year 1517. Okay? That's when Martin Luther posted his 95 Theses on the wall of Wittenberg Church, or the door of Wittenberg Church. And it was his 95 objections. And Lauren has a Luther bobblehead right here in the studio. Look at that.
With
Perfect.
his little nail and his little hammer guy.
Oh, what a nice guy.
That he hammered it into the wall.
And it was 95 objections to the Catholic Church at the time offering indulgences.
Mm-hmm.
Indulgences were, you can pay this money and your relative will get out of purgatory and go into heaven.
Right.
And he's like, no, that's not in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the famous phrase by a guy named Johann Tetzel at the time was, when a coin in the coffer rings, the soul from purgatory springs. I taught Reformation, so I know some of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And all that money was actually used to build St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. So anything prior to 1517, it's church history.
Mm-hmm.
It's not Catholic history. There was only two branches of the church. And for over 1,000 years, there was just one church.
Right.
Over 1,000 years. So that to say, I think we can look back at some wisdom from what this article from Arthur Brooks in The Atlantic calls monastics and not be weird about it. Soak it in. Not be like, well, I'm suspect. No, let's just see what we think of this stuff.
Sure.
So here's how Arthur Brooks starts his piece. An old saying commonly attributed to Mark Twain runs, it ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. One more time. It ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. Misinformation, or what some call fake news, is clearly a huge problem in our society, leading to a great deal of conflict. But this principle is, from my observation, also the biggest obstacle facing every young adult starting out a new life after college graduation. Focusing on all the things you don't know yet is very easy.
Mm-hmm.
The greater problem is everything the world has told you about your future that's simply not true. Our culture's propensity to spread misinformation is nothing new, of course. History abounds with instances of faddish nonsense that influence conventional wisdom. Fortunately, history also abounds with people and groups dedicated to stamping out fallacious error and declaring truths about life, even when doing so has been inconvenient or costly. A prime example is the Dominican order of priests, nuns, and friars, the Mendicant order of preachers, that was founded in France in 1216 by the Castilian priest Dominic de Guzman. Dominicans.
Mm.
You may have heard of Dominican priests or monks, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, in 1216, there were barely 2 branches of the church. So what Arthur Brooks does then is he gives 3 things he thinks in conventional wisdom in modern society that are wrong that we're telling young people. And then an antidote to that from monastics. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But just because monastics said it doesn't mean it's right. So let's evaluate this together. The first one, you've probably been told that college is a place for you to go figure out your career plans and life ambitions, where you discover what your passion is, what you're good at, and what the world needs specifically from you. College in particular is supposed to give you this information. In a road to Damascus sort of way, you should graduate clear and confident in your goals. If that doesn't happen, well, maybe you'll never have a job you love or really succeed as a result.
Mm.
He said, this is not true.
Right.
Is he accurate in his framing of the lie, do you think?
I don't know that anyone's perpetuating the lie. I think it's just kind of what people assume when they're graduating college. I've never heard anyone say those explicit words, though. But I think the sentiment is real.
I like how you frame that. Yeah. It's not like everyone's saying this. It's just like a common wisdom, so to speak. And Sarah and I have to tell our kids all the time that both of us graduated with degrees in which we are not using.
Right.
Sarah got a criminal justice degree, sociology and criminal justice, and she works in marketing. I have a master's degree in education, and I'm on the radio. Like, if I would have thought I had it figured out then, I was wrong.
And I don't know, maybe 30% of people change their major at least once during the college career. I was going to say during the 4 years of college, but if you change enough, it becomes 5 or 6.
Well, and you weren't working in your major.
No, I was a missions major. Mm-hmm.
Well, you're kind of in it.
Yeah.
Not international missions, no.
Well, this radio station could be listened to overseas.
It sure could.
You did it. You've arrived. Look at your goals. Ron, what was your degree again?
Communications.
Yeah, see, you're right in it. So is Daria. So we're halfway there. Okay. But here he gives some wisdom from monastics. Let's see what we think of this. That runs contrary to that principle of college is where you go to figure everything out and have your mission set before you. Okay. He said, in fact, you should not have your future all figured out. Not now and not later. We learn this from 13th century Dominican Meister Eckhart. Meister Eckhart. I want the title Meister. He taught that we should live without a why. Live without a why. By this, he did not mean at all that we should be directionless or that life is meaningless. On the contrary, no one was more steadfast than Eckhart in teaching what the ultimate objective of life should be, to act in a spirit of pure love before all else, and not to let worldly aims of money, power, and prestige distract us from this objective. By all means, we should have goals in life, but they should be intentions to give us direction. They should not be attachments, so that the priority of loving others can always take precedence. Process. He's got one tiny little piece missing, and it's that you dedicate your life to Christ, and that's where the love is born from.
Right.
Like, you receive love from Christ, therefore you're so grateful. I mean, remember, what's the greatest commandment? Love God, love your neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
Those who don't know love, as John wrote, don't know God, because God is love. So he's saying, as I can understand it, that this Meister Eckhart was saying, live without a why. Like, you don't have to have your purpose figured out, because your purpose is to go and love others.
It's interesting because one of the catchphrases in today's recent society is know your why. It's, imperative that you know your why. Why are you doing this? Why are you living this way. And he's saying just the opposite, all those years ago.
Ladies, what do you think of this? Again, you're supposed to live without a why. Again, it doesn't mean you shouldn't have goals, but they should be intentions to give us direction. And that should be to act in a spirit of pure love before all else. Prioritize love and let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah, I think it's the idea of not letting your purposes or like your, as he would say, your why get in the way of people. Like people are more important than your why.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also interpret that as I think we get so into our own heads that we just kind of block out other possibilities. You can be so driven that you're not going to let anything else come across your path and go, oh, that's interesting. Maybe I should explore this.
Yeah.
Has anyone, I've experienced something like this before, sort of. What about you guys?
Yeah, when I first went to college, I thought I was going to be a journalism major. And for that branch, I had to take radio classes. And I have been doing this since I was 19 now. I had no idea this was even an option, but I've been doing it for several years now, and I love it.
Yeah, you have to, as, was it Foreigner said this, hold on loosely.
But don't let go.
If you cling too tightly.
You're going to lose control.
You're not familiar with that, any of you?
I know who Foreigner is, but
Okay. But no, again, all I would tweak from Arthur Brooks is that the source of our love
right.
and the focal point of our love is Christ.
The only way that you can love people in that way is because of Christ.
What do you mean by that?
Out of our own volition, we can't love people well
Because other people are, generally speaking, horrible.
because we're selfish.
Well, both.
Yeah.
Both.
Yeah.
Because it seems crazy in sort of in Christian theology to love your enemy. That's nutty,
yeah.
right?
Mhm.
But it's possible because we're an enemy to God in our sin. And so if he could love me, I should find it very easy to love others. I mean, not always very easy, but it should be something that flows from me and is one of the defining characteristics of me. So in that sense, I think he's giving good advice. Don't think you're gonna exit your high school or college years, depending on who you are, having it all figured out and having clear direction. And if not, you're lost in life. No, focus on loving Christ and loving others, and you're gonna be all right.